Hi everyone, welcome to Series 3, Episode 7 of the Hidden London Hangouts. Loads to tell you today. Number one, no City because she's filming. But if you're missing City, join us on Patreon tonight at 8 o'clock. That's Saturday on Patreon. More details to follow because we're doing a Hidden London Hang-Up live about our subject today. It's so exciting. I don't do this on my own at all. I've got today two amazing, delightful characters from the London Transport Museum. As always, he's here, Chris Nix, and bejumpered to bejesus. What?
Well, Alex, I wasn't quite sure how to dress for this one because this week's theme is both about relaxing in the countryside whilst holding down the job to pay for that lifestyle in the city. So, bowler, jumper, yeah, there we are.
Can you do me a favour? Can you wear that all episode?
I might crack after a few minutes, if I'm honest, but I'll give it a go to begin with. How about that?
I think he looks absolutely amazing in that bowler hat. Awesome stuff. And also the gorgeous, effervescent, artistic, delightful Laura Hilton Brown is here as well. Hi, Laura.
Wow, what an introduction. I'm liking that. I want you to do that every week now. I want you to think of lots of lovely words to describe me. Just by the way, you're looking splendid in red, by the way. So I don't think we've told the viewers what we're going to do this week. Am I allowed to give it away by just saying something ever so sneaky now?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. So in 1997, there was a film called Metroland, and it starred Christian Bale. And it was based on a book by Julian Barnes. And the tagline of the film is Metroland is not a location of mind. And I just think that's really lovely. And I think as a concept, it would be really good to just kind of have that in our minds as we go through this episode.
You know, it's funny you should say that because you've done that. I found a little bit of poetry because Metroland is all about Betjeman. It's John Betjeman, former poet laureate. And he said, back to the simple life, back to nature, to a shady retreat in the reeds and rushes of the River Chess. The lure of Metroland was remoteness and quiet. And today we're going to northwest London to find out how London grew as a result of the tubes, clever architects, and a desire to see greenery instead of just drab bricks and mortar. And that is what Metroland is all about. Chris Nix, in the bowler hat, in the amazing art room that you work in, tell us about the origins of Metroland. Take us back to the start, 1900-ish, maybe a bit before.
So the concept of working in the city and living in the countryside has been around for quite a while, but it took a while to acquire a name that we know it by today. So let's just start off by having a look at some of that lovely countryside that we might now term Metroland today and how it was sold. So here we go. We start with an image of the River Chess. This is out near Chalfont and Chennes, and a bucolic scene of the cows coming down towards the river edge in this lovely, lovely part of the world. And the Metropolitan line was building its railways out in that direction. And it was marketing that lifestyle. We see on the left here a booklet that dates back to 1889, showing you the kind of the countryside scene that would await you on that extension of the Metropolitan line out towards Northwood, Rickmansworth, Chennes and Chesham. Okay, so they haven't called it that term Metroland at this point, but the concept is absolutely there. And houses are built in those areas which are more affordable than they would be in the centre of town. On the right here, we have the guidebook published in 1915, which uses the term metro-land to describe this area served by the Metropolitan line that's been converted from farmland into affordable housing. Interesting, isn't it, that right in the middle of the First World War, the marketing department of the Metropolitan line are selling houses to those at home through this. And also, just another thing, just to sort of cite us for what life was like at the time and quite how revolutionary this standard of living would be. Open up the front cover of that book, and on the right-hand side, you can see that they're advertising that you might want to install electricity in your new home. By no means a given. So there we are. We have this concept of live in the city and earn a decent wage and move out to the countryside into one of these areas to the northwest of London to enjoy a better lifestyle in a larger house with a garden of your own and easy access to the beautiful countryside all the way around. This map shows you the full extent of Metroland when it was at its height. Its northernmost tip there up at Verney Junction, and a really vast area that was made accessible for housing with a swift journey from the city.
I love that. Do you know, one of the things that we've tried to do during lockdown is to open your horizons up, because if you're anything like me or Chris or Laura, we've walked all around our neighbourhoods already. We know every blade of grass. We know where every misplaced brick is. We know who parks where and everything else. And we try to take you somewhere new. So Chris and I decided to go to the heart of Metroland, if you like, to a place called Rayners Lane. You've probably seen it on the tube maps. And we decided to have a look around to see exactly what was created in that area.
So as we get down to the bottom of the town, you can see that the architecture of Metroland is really starting here with this kind of half-timbered appearance, not Tudor of course.
It's like a pretty village though, isn't it? It's funny, the snow helps.
It does.
And it does look incredibly idyllic, but it does not look, to be fair, it doesn't look like London.
No. And that's because, you know, it only just is London, it's Greater London, and as we come down towards this section here where the residences begin, this is where we can start to see some of those houses that are being sold in the brochures of Metroland in the 30s. And you might recognise some of those designs as one of the ones which we saw in the booklet.
Absolutely. What sort of people moved out here?
Well, people who were working in the city but wanted to enjoy the lure of rural life and have a bit more space to live, and people who could afford those relatively modest mortgages, I suppose, for the day. But you know, people who were wealthy enough to afford that, but wanted a bit of space and air. And one like that over there, that one just behind the hedge.
And the other thing about this area is that a lot of people, you know, you yourself have got an allotment that you love.
Yep.
And a lot of people who lived around here also got allotments because it was a bit of an extension to their garden, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah, so they could tend their flowers and do a little bit of veg in their garden, but they might also have an allotment as well, so they had a bit more space. And part of the dream that's being sold here is the proximity to woodlands and places of interest, and also these little parks that were kept. And this would originally have been farmland, of course. The name Rayners Lane comes from the name of the farmer.
Farmer Rayner.
That's right.
I've actually wearing his hat today.
I noticed
This is
that.
Farmer Rayner's hat. My dad, by the way, Dad, I know you love this hat, so I'm wearing it just for you. What's really interesting about this, the only other place I've been to that reminds me of this is Letchworth, the Garden City.
Yeah.
Now, is there any sort of similarity in the design between a Garden City and Metroland?
Well, yeah, this is sold as the Garden Village. This is Harrow Garden Village that we're on the edge of right now. So yeah, it's not quite the same as the whole Letchworth experience, but you can certainly see that there's more greenery here than you might expect to find deep in the heart of central London.
Yeah.
And after all, I'm somebody who has also bought the Metroland dream, moved out into Metroland 5 years ago from further into London. For precisely the same reasons that I think people originally bought it. Work in town, want a bigger property and not just a small flat, and it's more affordable out here.
Have you noticed, by the way, not a noise? It's almost silent. We really picked the weather, didn't we, for that one? Wonderful stuff. And of course, my lovely cap. My poor old father hates me wearing that cap. He thinks I look a complete idiot in it. But trust me, it was the only thing keeping my head warm that day. It's such a blissful experience walking down any road with Chris because he knows everything. And it was just an idyllic scene, wasn't it, Chris?
It really was. I mean, it was freezing cold, but it was very pretty to be out there, and really great just to be able to go and set the scene. But we did feel a bit like people were missing, didn't we, on that trip? We did. Now, before you do that, have we got Farmer Rayner's farm to have a look at? I think we should before we go too much further down those accents, Alec. Yeah.
As we are so nice.
Look at that. Look at that.
So Don Rayner was the name of the farmer who was in this farmhouse. The road actually had a different name before. It had a couple of names before that. But when the station was being named, that was the only property of any significance near it, and so it gave its name to the road.
I love that. And as you said, Chris, we don't like it when our girls aren't with us, really. It's fun to do a boys' trip, but it's always nicer with the girls. So we thought, well, given that we were out in the cold and the pelting snow, let's join the girls in their lounges where it's warm and they have hot chocolate.
Girls on the call. Yeah?
The great thing about magic is if you click your fingers, they do this, don't they? Cindy, are you there?
Hello! Wow, you're outside.
Click again. Laura, are you there?
Oh, snug and warm. I'm here.
Amazing stuff. So, girls, we are here, so you don't have to be. And anyone who's watching now does not have to be out in the snow because we're here in Metroland, looking around, having a bit of a nose round, seeing how the world evolved in the early part of the 20th century, really.
Yeah. So it'd be good to see what you think if we swizzle the camera, and we'll go and have a little walk around to our left here and see what the houses are like.
Laura, what do you make of the houses?
I think they look lovely.
Is that like that's like a mock Tudor there?
A little bit of mock Tudor. We've got I mean, it is basically pretty little houses, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
I think it's how you describe it. Pretty
Set in a
little
nice leafy environment with plenty of space.
I love that you've made it snow as well, so it looks even more pretty.
Yeah,
cool.
it looks very fairy tales of looks like fairy tales of like the Grimm brothers or something up there, doesn't it? Oh, that's you guys. You're the Grimm brothers.
There they are.
So yeah, there you are, your little slice of country idyll in affordable packages in Metroland.
And what I really love is the fact that we've got double yellow lines going down the roads, which is obviously very welcoming, isn't it, really? Don't park your car here. No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't. But it's peaceful. It's absolutely peaceful around here.
Well, I think it's going to be time to build a snowman fairly soon.
Girls, do you want to join us? Oh, no.
I'm just gonna stay here and have a hot chocolate, maybe watch a bit of Netflix. But you guys,
Yeah, I might have a brew. I'm going to join
Right, we'll see you back at the studio.
Boys are having fun again, and the girls are going, no.
Well, thanks for calling us, guys.
It's good to see you.
Bye.
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 I don't think even my brothers called me a Grimm brother. That's incredible. Unbelievable. Me and Chris, the Grimm brothers. Laura, was there even a little bit of you that wanted to be out in the snow with us?
Do you know what I really love about that is that you two have such a lovely little bromance. When I was watching you walking along there in the snow and you've got your flat cap and your lovely moquette rucksack and Chris is sporting his lovely moquette scarf and you two are brilliant roving reporters. I have to say, I do love the snow, but watching you out in it kind of being quite chilly, I was quite glad that I wasn't rove reporting that day. But you two did a great job.
Bless you, Laura. I feel like I might have points taken off me though, because I was out in Metroland wearing a district scarf, which was a bit of a faux pas.
I didn't want to say.
But thank you. The other thing which I realised is I think I just said that the name of the farmer was John Rayner. If I did, it was actually, I think, David Rayner. I know that will be important to someone, so I'll try and get that right.
But we got it right because we said it was Farmer Rayner. That's all we
He's
needed
still
to
called
do.
Farmer
No one
Rainer.
cares about
That's
his
okay.
first name. It's Farmer Rainer. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. And you're absolutely right. Yeah, total bromance going on. And we do our mandates now on a Thursday night on Zoom just to watch the episodes. But I can tell you, about an hour of that is spent gossiping with wine, and then there's an hour after where we're gossiping with wine. It's perfect. But interestingly, when we were looking at all of that, the one thing that really stuck in my mind was where we were in London. This was northwest London, a place which at the turn of the century was pretty much fields, as we saw in the posters episode, the artwork episode. But then over time, the march of the tube generated a march of building, and that's how Metroland spread out from central London. And it did, Chris, didn't it? It grew along the tube lines of the Piccadilly and the Metropolitan line, didn't it?
Yeah, so as the Metropolitan line pushed out, there was all of this land around it that could be developed and turned into houses and connected with the city. And fortunately for us, they made it even more interesting by marketing it very heavily in order to make sure those houses sold. And because of that, they produced some things that are really quite fabulous to look at, which are there simply to sell you the dream of moving out to the countryside to live. And I think we should have a look at some of it.
I was going to say, it does take you back, doesn't it, to the days when, do you remember you used to pay for the Evening Standard? We actually used to
I
do
remember that.
Our
Yes.
reading on the way home, we used to pay 30p for the paper, and then they made it free.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, on here, look, they're charging you for the estate agent's particulars of houses you could buy.
Absolutely right. This is 1928. So after the First World War was over, the expansion of Metroland carried on enormously in the 20s and 30s, which is what a lot of people will probably think of as its heyday, because it had a name by then and because there was all this fabulous kind of material that went with it. But there you are, there's the dream. For 2p, you can have yourself the booklet. It's quite a thick book, actually, which tells you everything you need to know about what it would be like to live in these places, how quickly you could travel there, and more importantly, how much it would cost you to buy the house.
It's
So what do you think?
box,
Bit of
it?
mock
It's-
Tudor?
Well, it's chocolate box. I mean, you know, anybody, would you live there, Laura?
Can I ask you both a question, please? With the what is the kind of what? Oh, hang on. Let me think of the question first. Architect.
Another T-shirt.
I know. Oh, not doing myself any favors. Architecturally, why was it a kind of revival of Tudor style housing in this period? Why was it that way?
Well, what they were aiming to do, and we'll see a bit of this later on, though, it's a very good question, by the way. What we'll see
When I
later
got
on,
there.
they were trying to create a mixture of housing, so you didn't just end up with serried ranks of things that looked identical. And indeed, the marketing material does say, you know, no identical houses and things like that. So some are mock Tudor, as City pointed out when we were on the ground, but others aren't. So that's just one of the styles. But they're trying to give it a country feel to the look.
Okay.
And that magazine,
I
that
assumed
booklet.
it was.
So go on, Laura.
No. Sorry, I was just going to say I assumed it was mainly aesthetics, but I didn't know kind of because on all of the posters, it's very typically that kind of mock Tudor, kind of Tudor revival of style housing, isn't it?
Yeah, there's plenty of that in there, that's for sure. But there is also a mixture which isn't just that. Yeah.
So it looks very chocolate box on the front cover of this ridiculous piece of marketing material that you have to pay for. What does it say inside?
Well, these are now, of course, collector's items, Alex. But if we just hop inside and have a look, it carries on selling you the dream. It tells you a little bit about each of these places with some helpful sketches so that you can see, there you are, the trout farm at Chorley Wood, always a winner. Always a decision
Anyone want a
maker.
day out? Anybody for a day out of the trout farm in Chorley Wood?
If you two don't take Siddy and I there on our first date out of lockdown, I'll be very upset.
The trout farm,
Where
yeah.
do we take the girls?
We'll do it.
To a trout farm.
And you know, if that wasn't your bag, if you preferred it slightly less fishy, then there's the River Chess. The River Chess.
It does look lovely.
Yeah.
The River at Chechnya. That is,
Yeah, that's easy for me to say, isn't it?
I love that. It's beautiful, though, isn't it? And that is a booklet that they were presumably selling at tube stations as a bit of journey home reading.
Yeah, they're published by the Metropolitan line, and down at the bottom you can see that in the text they're trying to sell you the history of these places. I don't think Uxbridge has ever been so heavily sold as a historic city, dating back to the time of Alfred, and Ruislip and Harrow above it the same. So they really, to quote PG Woodhouse, they've got all the reticence of a soap commercial.
And when you look at that book, we were in Rayners Lane, which is, I think, known as Harrow. There it is, Harrow Garden Village, and oh, here we go. He's got the book. He's got the book.
I was about to say before I accidentally clipped the next slide, and of course, this is mine, or one of mine, and you can see, there's a fair amount in it. And as I say, you go inside, and it's more images and helpful maps, as we'll see in a moment, to help you find your way around and plan where you're going to buy your amazing new house, with the rates, typical rates of mortgage and price of those properties. So yeah, they're lovely things. And
can I just say, by the way, just pause there a moment, Mr. Nitz, because I just need to say this. He's not just a historian. He's not just a good egg. He's not just an incredible drinker. He's also a bookbinder, because that book was broken when you got it, wasn't it?
It was indeed, yeah. I had to do a little bit of restoration work on the spine there, because it had come completely undone, and the same with its twin. But we had grand plans when we went out there to do a bit of a Michael Portillo, walking around with our Metroland equivalent of Bradshaws, and the snow scuppered the plans. So there we go. We have to show you back in the studio. And these came out each year, and they had different seductive scenes on the front to make you think, oh, I'd love to live there, rather than in my small house in the inner city, woken by the sound of sparrows coughing and all of that. So
right, it sounds beautiful. Just out of interest, because I mean, there's a lot of artwork that you've just fleeted in front of us. What do you think, Laura? Because you're the artwork fiend. Do you like the look of what you saw?
I do. I love all of the kind of the Metroland artwork. Essentially, it's kind of a collection of very idealistic posters that, as Chris keeps referring to, that's selling you this dream. It's promoting the proximity of the city and the countryside as a very kind of idealistic or lovely kind of dual lifestyle choice, effectively. And all of those posters kind of have that same agenda, but they're very countrified. There's lots of lakes and rivers and flowers and fields, and so I do love it. I just think it's amazing that effectively a marketing team of the Metropolitan Railway coined this phrase that's now such an iconic kind of concept and phrase. I mean, that's phenomenal, isn't it?
It's absolutely wonderful. And when you look at all of this stuff, we're going to go back to Harrow Garden Village, and when you look at that, we walk around there at a time when the whole area is so established. There was Indian restaurants, there was mini supermarkets, there was key cutting, there was every type of shop you could imagine around Rayners Lane. And that is how it started, from a little double-page spread in a 2-penny or 1-penny book.
And I think what's really tremendous about this is, this is a publication which is being published in 1931. So these things haven't actually been built yet. If you look closely at this map, which covers the area we were at, I won't pinpoint exactly where we were, so they don't have hordes of Hilton and Hangout sightseers trying to retrace our steps. But you can see over on the just towards the left here, there's site for school and site for church. They're telling you that these amenities will be there, but they're planned to be there, but they're not there yet, because this was open fields. And you'll see again, there's a site for another church towards the north there.
And it was quite gritty as well, wasn't it? The design was quite gritty.
Yes, yeah. I mean, there are some curved lines, but you are right. It is laid out in much more of a grid than you would typically find elsewhere in London. And the all-important link to the city is to the right-hand side there, the Metropolitan Railway. So that is being shown very clearly. Here's your new estate with an easy walking distance of that link that will get you back into the city very quickly. And even better, it's on the split of the line. So you've got two railways there. You've got the Metropolitan line, and you've got to the right there, the Piccadilly line by this point. But more of that complicated story shortly.
Utterly fascinating. When you look at that map, of course, that was populated by houses, Chris. And I'm sure if I ask you very nicely, there's even a shot of a housing particular with, I dare say, a price tag on it.
Well, yes, it was probably a little bit hard to make out on the film, but there was one moment when I was talking about one of these houses and the camera just turned away, and therefore it just lost the bit where I was talking about how much that house shown here on the right, the Type B, would have cost if you were buying it kind of off plan. And down at the bottom there, if I just zoom you in.
I love the fact it's a 7-roomed house.
Right. 7-roomed
Easy
house.
and practical.
£1,050 freehold. We'd all take that, wouldn't we?
And don't you worry, because if you can't afford
Bargain,
it all
let's
in
have
one
it.
go, you can do weekly repayments of 33 shillings and 7 old pence with a deposit of 50 smackers.
I'll put that down right now.
Yeah, exactly. Can I have 7 of them? That'll do me. Thank you very much. I mean,
What
Laura,
a
when
great,
you look
what
at
a great
that,
description, though.
yeah,
A delightful and well-proportioned rooms. Good garden. Good garden. I love it.
it's quite. It's
Not
quite
an
incredible.
excellent one, not a slightly rubbish one, but a good
garden.
one.
Yeah, and I like a compact, semi-detached 7-room residence as well. You tell that to anyone living in a bedsit at the moment.
Indeed.
Remarkable stuff.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the only one, was there? Because there was another one
No.
you could get for about 750 quid, wasn't there?
Well, that's right, yeah. And just to
Ooh.
the right, to the left there, you've got an example of a semi-detached house. And, to Laura's earlier question about were they all mock Tudor? No, there were some that were brick, some were pebble dashed and rendered. So there's a mixture of styles. And of course, bungalows as well, because it's a real kind of mixed society that they're aiming for. There's maisonettes. This isn't all produced for wealthy people who can afford a big house. It was aimed to be a blended community that had people who were retired, people who just wanted a flat or a maisonette, but they would cater for all. And yes, if £750 is your price tag, Alex, there you go. Good news.
I mean, that's definitely not a Type A semi, is it really?
No.
That one on the right. Describe that one to us, Chris.
Well, the one on the right, you can see, if I just zoom it in a little bit, called zoom for a reason. You can see you've got copious amounts of bedrooms. You've got your 3 bedrooms, including one that's very, very small, and then you've got your dining room and drawing room downstairs.
Lived in a house with a drawing room. I've never had a drawing room.
Yes, indeed. I wonder what you draw if you did. You've got a kitchen at the back, which probably looks a bit small to modernise relative to the rest of it, but that with a garden, what a tremendous thing for £750.
Alex's drawing room would just be full of huge metal or enamel London Underground signage, like Kensington Town, like that massive.
I was just wondering though, when Farmer Rayner comes round with his tractor, I wonder if you could say to him, by the way, Farmer Rayner, we're just going to knock through from the kitchen to the dining room and make it a bit bigger and open plan. Do you reckon they did that back then?
Do you know, I was just about to say, as Laura said that, no, Alex would knock it through, because that's clearly what you're saying.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just so fascinating. This is just, to think a whole area of London was opened up and developed with a sheer view of creating communities which are mixed and affluent and aspiring, I suppose. As we hinted when we were watching that film of Chris and I walking up the road, allotments were a big thing because they wanted to expand your horizons even further and further, didn't they, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. Allotment's very popular. Even the station had its own little garden, tended by the staff there when they weren't issuing tickets and so on. The thing that I really like, though, on this is the poster to the left. If we just unpack again how much effort is being put into selling this, decent-sized estate that's being built, but this is a poster explaining that it's going to take you a mere 21 minutes to get from that station to Baker Street and then on into the city. And it's talking about the amenities. So you've got liberal open spaces, which I think is where we were, the tennis courts, and reassuring you that it's well-known builders, so it's quality stuff that you'd be moving into, and that there'd be houses and shops. Sorry, there'd be shops there alongside the houses. So the final bit at the bottom is cheap tickets from all metro stations on Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays, and that is part of the, well, why don't you go up and view the area and decide if it's for you? So there's a lot of effort being put into this, getting people to buy the dream.
And can I just add to that poster that I love the chessboards analogy at the top as well. There's it's got like a dual meaning, because you've obviously got, make a good move on a chessboard, win the game, win your great house, win that dream, achieve the ultimate. But it's also a little kind of subtle nod to the river chess a while ago that we mentioned a while ago as well at the beginning of the episode.
You're
nice.
Very clever. You're very, very clever.
Thanks.
Well, that blew my mind. I wasn't expecting that one.
Love
amazing
poster.
Stuff. Amazing stuff. Have you got any more? Have you got any more picks?
Yeah, because as well as trying to persuade people that they might want to live there, you may want to travel into these areas for a different reason. Why else might you want to go out into the countryside, do you think?
Well, I'd like a walk in the country. What about you, Chris? Do you like a walk in the country?
Anybody? Yes, I do like a walk in the country. Thank you, Alex. And that's what I was looking for. There you go, London's Pleasureland.
And I suppose the ideal thing about it is that it's on your doorstep, isn't it? It's actually on your doorstep. Mm-hmm. So if you think of that as your rural idyll, you move out to Metroland, and it's not just your garden that you're loving, it's the walks along the River Chess.
Absolutely. Cheap fares and a pleasure party.
Cheap fare to pleasure party.
Can we have one of those?
A pleasure party.
I have to say, I was expecting more reaction on this.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that in our Patreon later.
But there we go. Whether it's travel for to go home or for leisure, Metropolitan Railway had you covered with Metroland and Pleasureland.
I think it's so beautiful. I mean, you are creating in your work. Bearing in mind, central London, the inner bits of London were sooty and dirty and crowded, and we are creating something that is airy and green and aspirational and joyful, and that's why people would take those cheap tickets and go up and have a look around and see if they could find a property that they liked and they could afford and that worked for their aspirational life of having kids or going to church and all those sorts of things, and building churches. That's amazing. And it's funny you should say about building things, because the Tube was changing at that time too in terms of its architecture and stuff like that. And the 1930s were the heyday, if you like, of Metroland. And it was reflected in the Tube station buildings too, wasn't it, Chris?
It was, yeah. And you mentioned right at the start that the concept of Metroland had been around before the name was coined. And so had the line that we've been focusing on here, that Uxbridge line, had actually been built in 1904. There weren't many stations on it when it first opened. There was Ruislip and there was a halt at Rayners Lane. And we've been using Rayners Lane as the focus because that's where the Harrow Garden City was built. But let's have a look at what that station was like before the actual houses around it were built. Very much more basic.
Wow. I mean, that is a very, very basic Rayners Lane, isn't it?
It is. It's basically a hut. on a wooden platform, and that's how it was. The go-ahead for those houses to be built and that estate to be created was really the go-ahead for the development of that station into what is there today. Now, this is obviously very basic. It is pretty well a tin shack on a wooden platform, and the Holt was put there in 1906. It got a little bit more development when the District line came along to join it in March of 1910. Now, a lot of people who live out that way would think, hang on a minute, it's the Piccadilly line. No, originally it was the District line that joined it from that spur that's now run by the Piccadilly line. The Piccadilly line first went there in 1933. And came to what we know it today as that joining of the Piccadilly line and the Metropolitan line. But it gets a bit more interesting in 1938. Come to that in a moment. The thing I just wanted to show you, though, was this is what a lot of people think about when you say Metroland and station. This is Watford's talked before about Clarkitecture, haven't we? In the Lord's episode. And that, of course, in turn set the look of a lot of the houses that were built around the stations, those earlier stations that are now in what we would call Metroland. But by 1938, of course, that would have looked rather old hat, that country suburban style. And in came Charles Holden and Reginald Uren, who... Could
you say that again, please, for us, Chris? Reginald,
no, thank you. You can rewind. And what they gave us was this masterpiece, instantly recognisable as Charles Holden's touch. And what do we have on the platform?
Well, I mean, for a start, we have some very, very pretty people, but we also have a standard stock tube train, don't we, ladies and gents?
A pair, yeah.
A lovely pair that is as well.
It is. And there we go. That's actually shot in 1950. Those standards did remain in service quite a long time after the war. But so that station built 1938. It's now Grade 2 listed. We'll see a little bit of what it looks like at the moment. But let's just drink in some of these features. Laura, what do you make of the style of this then? Just have a look at the details.
Do you know what? Well, bar the kind of architecture, but you know, I just love how the people look so smart. You know, if you go to a platform today, I know there's people in suits and ties kind of a little bit, but we just don't dress like that anymore, do we? No. But in terms of the station, it's so typical of the era, isn't it? It's very blocky, and those kind of large pillars of kind of the square windows. It's very, it's very
but
of
also
the era.
The lights as well. I mean, I know you were tucked up in the warm on the day we went up there, Laura. But
sorry,
the station hasn't changed much at all, really. The lights are still beautifully of the day. I think those Charles Holden buildings that we're looking at right ahead of us now have just got this beautiful glow about them that just make it welcoming. And it's that whole thing that we talked about so many times on these Hangouts, that everything about the tube is just so stunningly designed. Even those trains, look at the places where the air comes in and out of those trains. Look at how they're designed. They lasted and lasted and lasted. And those trains ended up on the Isle of Wight until the mid-90s. These trains came into service, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but it was in the 20s.
Absolutely right, yes. And as you say, if people would like to know more about their Isle of Wight history, then jump back into season 2 and have a look at the Island Trains episode. But yeah, Laura, I figured that you'd probably go for the lights. It's why I'd zoomed in there. The first time I went there, I thought exactly that. And anybody who knows this stretch of line, who lives out on this end of the line, will know exactly what these people are doing and roughly what time of day it is, just from that scene. And because I live out at this end of town, I'll tell you exactly what they're doing. That's a Piccadilly line train, which has just turfed everybody out because they're about to terminate it short of Uxbridge, put it into the siding and reverse it. and they're all getting off ready for the Metropolitan line that will be coming through in the background. So I can tell by the angle of the sun from having stood there many times, that's the evening, and those people are on their way home from work, I believe, and waiting for the next Metropolitan line train.
Right, and before you move on from that picture, I never realised this until we were doing the Isle of Wight episode, that A on the end of the train is the A end of that train, and there's a D end of that train, which is at the other end, isn't it? A, B, C, D. Carriage A, carriage B, carriage C, carriage D. And the other end's got a D on it.
That's right. And I'm also now relieved that now I've zoomed out that the message board on the front that I should have looked at before making that bold statement does agree that it's terminating at Rayners Lake. So,
you always get it
halfway
right.
through, I was like, God,
you know what?
right.
You should have more faith in your comments than you do, because we all believe you, everything you say. Show us more of this station
I was
as well.
just about to say, sorry, I was just about to say that was such a phenomenal piece of like narrative for that picture from Chris. I'm really disappointed you weren't wearing your bowler hat for that bit. That would have been perfect.
You're right. I'm sorry,
it
the earlier snowstorm blew it off, but I'll put it back on in case I say anything else that's wise.
I love it. Would you buy a used car off him? That's the question.
It's a great runner, sir. You won't find another one at that price.
Gets to the end of the road and comps out.
So, should we have a look at what it's like today?
You can fix your windows and your books at the same time.
Look at that.
So, this is a view that we shot whilst down at the station, and this is looking up into that clerestory, or yes, to reassure somebody who wrote in, you can say clerestory, either is acceptable in the OED. That's the amazing ceiling above the ticket hall there, a bit like, you know, the stations at Acton Town, you know, in Chiswick Park, far taller than they really need to be, but they do that thing that Frank Pick said stations should do, which is to, at night, act as a beacon for the system. Look at it from the other side. Those lit windows and the lit roundel with the flagpole there. When you're walking down the street, even if you've never been there before, you can see that station from half a mile away quite easily.
And Frank Pick was one of the sort of architects of the London Underground, really, wasn't he? He was one of the men who just made it look as it does today.
The absolute creative soul behind it all.
Yeah, and a man who could track down amazing creatives who were at the top of their game and put them to work to revolutionise the style of the Underground.
Any more?
So one more, which we saw those lovely lamps on the platform, and they survived today. They haven't survived everywhere they were built on the Underground, but they survived today. I suspect they were handcrafted at Parsons Green Works, because I have seen some images of similar bus stop poles being constructed in that way. So I think they were hand built by the Underground for the Underground.
It's absolutely glorious.
It's a nice symmetrical picture as well.
I tried. Can you just see on the right hand side? I don't know if you just see on the right hand side, just as I framed it, a Piccadilly line train came in. So that's what that blur is to the right.
It was such a nice day, and we sort of hinted at it, that the tube station is a bit like, it looks like a furnace at the end of the road of warmth. So when you're walking along, and it was bitterly cold out there that day, the tube station, it just looks lovely, and you want to be there, and you want to be in there and waiting for a train to take you somewhere exciting. And I think either way, whether you're going to Metroland or leaving it to go to somewhere else, there was something very beautiful about the place that you're going to use to travel, and that in itself sums up London's Undergrounds and all the design brilliance that goes along with it. Now, if we take ourselves up towards World War II at this stage, which is pretty much where we're going to leave this story for today, we will be back in Metroland, so much to tell you. But World War II did kind of slow down the whole Metroland journey, didn't it, really? And of course, Greenbelt came along as well, didn't it, Chris?
Yeah, I think that those two things. One, the enormous reduction in population, sadly, as a direct result of the Second World War, and also the restrictions on where you could build, meant that expansion plans, not just for the Metropolitan Railway, but also for the Northern Line, for the Central Line, were all kind of reined in by that Greenbelt legislation. The need and the ability the need to build and the ability to build were both curtailed really by that.
But it's interesting because I mean, when you look at what I suppose you could ruin a phrase and call it white collar flight, which is what was going on at the time, taking people out of central London with aspiration and money, most importantly, to go and live out there. If you then spool along a little bit further to maybe nearer to now, that whole idyll of Metroland that Chris has taken on, because Chris now lives in Metroland and loves his life and has got an allotment and everything else, it's beautiful. But at the same time, Laura, there is that sort of migration back to central London, isn't there? From places like Metroland, which were places which were just seen as being funky and exciting and in zone 1 and 2 and where you want to be if you want to have a Technicolor life.
I love that, Technicolor life. But absolutely, what you've said is spot on. And I read an article while I was just doing a little bit of research for this, and it was an online article from The Guardian, and it was written about 5 years ago. And it referenced a trend called the Great Inversion, which was pretty much coined by The Economist. And what it was referring to is, I guess, that reflection of London's kind of inner city boroughs that were once just dirty and dusty and bustling and overcrowded, and people just wanted to get out of there over to Metroland. And then what kind of started to happen is these boroughs started to climb that kind of socio-economic ladder, and their status grew and then their appeal grew. So people were starting to kind of linger in these areas for longer, and it just slowed that momentum down of that traditional move out of the city into the green, into the space. So for example, kind of Brixton is a great area now, which I think the article actually referenced as well. The people just wanted to stay there a little bit longer. There was a shorter commute to get into work. They could afford a flat or a house there. Some places started to have more green available with kind of parks and the commons. And so it just kind of slowed ever so slightly that kind of traditional momentum that had been growing up since the 30s. Of Metroland. But as Chris said before, he moved out at about that time, didn't you, Chris?
Yeah, it was really interesting to hear you talk about that, because I think, post Clean Air Act and heavy industry going away in central London, that absolutely right. For decades the centre of London had been developing. You've got things like Canary Wharf being built, and so yes, I think there was that move back in. I suspect about 6 months after that article was written, though, I was listening to a lecture at our museum where Tony Travers was talking about then the move back out again already beginning, as places like Harrow and Croydon, these kind of big satellite areas that are served very well by railways built, back in the 20s and 30s, were ripe for being built up. And he was predicting that people will be moving out to those places. So I think wherever there's a potential housing solution, and there are things that people would like to go and see in their social time, that is a reason for people to settle and to move into different places. So I think there'll always be a little bit of flux between central London and the lifestyle there, and outer London and the lifestyle that can be there, and where the jobs are. And hate to mention the situation we've all been through this last year, but there is another force for change as to where people choose to live and work that's been radically all of those assumptions that people had have been radically challenged in the last year. So I no doubt we'll see a change there again.
Well, totally. If you're going to get stuck indoors, you don't want to be stuck in one room, do you? You want to be out in 7-roomed modest apartments, or whatever they called them. £750.
Crikey, we all
£50 deposit. It's going to be great.
We've got a bit analytical there. That was sounding all very serious and thoughtful for a moment.
Do you know, I didn't know whether to say. I didn't know whether to show my cards and say Tony Travers was one of my lecturers at university, and he's a very, very lovely man, by the way.
Absolutely.
But that does seem like a very, very clever thing to say. What I actually wanted to say was, if Siddy was here, I would have said to her about, what would you rather do, love? Would you rather live in zone 2 and leave the pub at midnight, or would you rather leave the pub at 10 o'clock to get back to zone 4, which is exactly what we had to do when we moved out. It's a very, very different world. So you want the clever answer or the more sort of drunkard answer? I think I'll go with the drunkard one for this one. Amazing stuff. We will come back to this. And just to say, if you like what you've heard so far, we're doing a Patreon live at 8 o'clock tonight, okay? So get onto Patreon. Speaking of which, we can tell you all about that, can't we, Chris?
We absolutely can, Alex. Our Patreon scheme has been up and running for a good month now, where people can come show their support for what we do and also enjoy some delicious extra content as a thank you. And that's what we will be doing after the show with our up-tier Patreons. And we're going to give you a little snippet of what our Hidden London hang-up from last week looked like when we talked about art.
We can't shut up, can we?
Turns out we had a lot more to say than we thought, and more images to share than we thought.
Yeah, that's lovely. I like the mosaic in the kind of top right-hand corner.
Wow. To say that this is crap.
So
now it is.
So Alex, is now a good time to tell you what it is and who it's by?
So obviously I have a rather strange obsession with flamingos.
Alex, you are a poet and you didn't even know it.
I think I've turned into Melvin Bragg.
We love chatting and hanging out.
And you can upgrade anytime you like, by the way. It's even more stuff up there. See, we do have a load of fun, and tonight we're going to do it live, which is going to be absolutely fantastic. But Chris, if anyone's interested in finding out a bit more, how do they find the Patreon?
Very simple. Head to londontransportmuseum.co.uk, and if you look for the Hidden London tab in there, you will find the Hidden London Hangouts beneath that, and that is where the details of how to sign up to Patreon are.
It's going to be fantastic. So come and join us there at 8 o'clock tonight. If you're watching this after the live episode, doesn't matter, because anything we put on Patreon stays there in perpetuity as well. So come and have some fun with us and look after the museum as you do. Also, another bit of administration that we are very, very sorry we didn't tell you this earlier, but in the Christmas episode, we launched a poster competition to win some awesome posters from the museum. And we have a winner, don't we, Chris?
We do, and we're very sorry. We were so excited to be back. We clean forgot to announce our winner. So the winner of 2 lovely posters, the Brightest London poster and the It's Warmer Down Below poster, is Lorraine. So thank you for entering, everybody, and well done to Lorraine. I hope you enjoy the posters when they arrive.
Awesome stuff. Laura is very, very excited about your prize. We may actually teeth it on the way out the door. She may nick them for herself.
It might not arrive, Lorraine, sorry.
It's going to be great. She's going to have them. Notes, queries and questions, as always, your correspondence we love. First of all, a huge hello to Bernie Keith. I was on his show on the Beeb a couple of weeks ago, so thanks for making me so welcome. And Chris and I are appearing on BBC London on Friday, which is going to be lovely, chatting to Joe Good, which is going to be absolutely fantastic, one of my favourite presenters of all time, which is good. Also, Joanne Gill, another Joe, asked 2 questions, actually. Chris, if you can get these, this is stupendous, but I don't expect this. She says, which is the oldest lift still in passenger service on the London Underground?
Oh, well, okay. As a sign that we don't prep on this bit, that's a good question.
It's a good question,
honestly. I can tell you the oldest one that still exists, which is the pair that are in Aldwych, but in service. I really don't know.
Isn't he? Nick's is good that he knew that about Aldwych. And Laura, obviously those lifts are a bit of a sweet one of yours, aren't they?
You know what? I just got very excited then because I watched a film on Netflix with Ralph Fiennes and Carey Mulligan. It's called The Dig. And Aldwych is on it. And I was watching it, I went, they're the lifts at Aldwych, they're the lifts. And I got very excited. It's like a nanosecond, but they're in that film if anyone wants to watch.
They're there. Someone spotted, by the way, that when I'm doing the notes, quiz and questions, I rub my arm. This isn't where I've had my COVID jab. I just tend to rub my arm, which is really weird. She also has another question, Joe. She had another random question. Which is the oldest tube station still in use? Well, it's got to be one of the ones on the northern. Oh, no.
Oh, come on now.
Baker Street.
There we go.
This is not planned.
London.
This is all thinking off the top of your head.
Paddington to Farringdon. Take your pick.
Absolutely. So there you go. So any one of those, and that is from the first chunk of tube stations. But she did say tube, so I suppose that's where my brain was going.
Well, so I know you these days we call everything the tube. So it's a term that was adopted once the deep level tube was built. Technically, of course, I can hear you arguing that the Metropolitan line is a subsurface railway rather than the proper definition of a tube. Fair enough. In which case, you're going to be looking to the City and South London Railway, and you'll be looking at anything from
London Bridge.
Stockwell up really to where they diverted it around King William Street at London Bridge. So yeah, there's a few there. Kennington would be a good example. See,
I'd love to say, I really would love to say that my brain was there thinking to myself, tube station, that must be the City and South London Railway. But actually, to be perfectly frank, this is all a bit of a blur by now. We've been in and out of snowy Metroland. It's been fantastic. Thanks again for all the information and entertainment, says Joanne. I hope those answer your questions. Also, love this on YouTube. James the Plonker. Do you remember we had Podgy Asthmatic? We've now got James the Plonker. Loving the series. You lot are brilliant as always. But the other night I was catching up on missed episodes and a question arose in my head. Bearing in mind it was 2 a.m. I know the feeling, James the Plonker. I know the feeling. 2 a.m. And so I was quite half asleep. But my question is, how on earth do they get vehicles in and out of the London Transport Museum in Covent Garden when they haven't got engines and motors?
Great question. Great question.
Okay, that is good. Okay, well, it depends on what vehicle we're talking about. If the question is about, say, the steam train that's up on the first floor train table, the answer is you don't. It's when we did our last refurb, we were working out whether we wanted to reposition that, and so we did ask the question of a few companies of, if we had to move it out and back in again, what would it cost? And back in 2007, I think the answer was it's about £1 million out and £1 million in, because it's not easy. If it's the 38 stock that's in there was brought in on a low loader which came into Covent Garden before the building was finished, when it was originally built, and kind of loaded through the side of the building and then the walls built around it. So with the rail stuff, the answer is don't. However, with the road stuff that's at ground level, we have a rear entrance to the museum which is cunningly large enough that things can be brought in and out. And I heard you say there that they don't have engines in. Oh, they do. And they are kept in working condition. So the vehicles are inspected and checked so that they can, under their own steam, leave the building. So there we go.
Marvelous. I'm still boggling on your large rear entrance, actually. But Claire Hale says, Alex, was your pick of artwork in the artwork episode foreshadowing? That's a good word, isn't it? Foreshadowing a future episode on maps. I was only just thinking the other day that you guys haven't done them yet. We can do maps, can't we, Chris?
Oh, it's coming. We've been thinking about maps since season
totally
1.
Do maps.
Yeah.
Love this.
Yeah.
Drew says, hi, Alex. Hope you managed a good weekend. Caught the hangout yesterday. All the episodes are fun, but this one, the bants just get better and better. One of my favourites of the season so far. Loving the bants, eh? And Robert says the New York episode that we did, one of his favourites so far. Can you also do something on how White City nearly got the Eurostar? Can you imagine? So this is interesting, actually. It's a bit outside our remit, as Chris and I were chatting, but this dates back to the 1960s, and the Channel Tunnel, as we know it now, England to France, the underground tunnel that links it, was a 1960s idea that was kind of shelved. And when Barbara Castle, among other MPs at the time, were talking to the French about what was going to happen at this end, they suggested that the train could either finish at White City or, beat this, Covent Garden. So we're talking about how to get trains in and out of the London Transport Museum. You could have got off Eurostar right by the London Transport Museum if the plan had gone ahead. So it is actually one that's worth a bit of a look at some point, but maybe one for the future. But it's a really cool story. Can you imagine, as they do in Paris, get off at Gare du Nord. In London, you could have come right the way into Covent Garden to get off the Eurostar. What do you reckon, Laura? That'd have been quite cool, wouldn't it?
That's amazing knowledge, Grundon. I had no idea that was even a kind of plan. I know it obviously didn't come to fruition, but I didn't know that. So good skills, Mr. G.
Skills. This is what happens when you go to college at King's College
Skills.
London. Just round the corner from
Skills.
Aldwych Tube Station, and you did geography. There's little things that kind of linger in the back of your mind, but it's all good stuff. As always, Siddy, we'll see you at 8 o'clock for the Patreon live. Come and join us for that, guys. If you haven't signed up for that, do it now. Do it now, and we'll join you there. Laura, as always, thank you so much. You were wonderful.
Absolute pleasure. I was just thinking as we were doing that episode that my first kind of foray into Metroland was the Suburbia exhibition that I worked on back in, crumbs, Chris, 2009?
Yeah, round about then,
Which was,
great.
that was the first one that I programmed for. And it was a lovely exhibition about kind of how transport shapes the suburbs and that link between identity, lifestyle and architecture. And I just thought to myself, I wonder if any of our viewers went to Suburbia and saw that exhibition. It'd be lovely if you could let us know that if you did and what you thought of it, because that was my first exhibition. And I just wanted to finish, because I started with the film tagline. I just wanted to finish with a little, I know Alex did a bit of a Betjeman quote as well, but I really love this one because we used it in the exhibition. And so it's by John Betjeman, and he described Neasden. So obviously the whole corridor of development was kind of Neasden to the Chiltern Hills, wasn't it? He described Neasden as the home of the gnome and the ordinary person. And I thought that was really lovely to describe Metroland. Oh, do you have a gnome, Chris?
Do you know, you just made me think, when we moved into this house, there were so many gnomes left behind.
I remember that. That's why I thought of you and gnomes.
And we didn't want them to be gnomeless, so we gathered them together in a little kitsch corner.
Nothing surprises me anymore. It's the trees, the fairy dingles, and 101 things in which Dame Nature's fingers have lingered long in setting out this beautiful array of wooden slope, trout stream, meadow, and hilltop sites. Poet, and I don't even know it. Chris Nix, you were amazing today with your bowler hat.
Well, thank you, Alex. And I know at the start you weren't sure about whether you'd want a house in Metroland, but I hope this has helped you decide whether you want a mock Tudor or a semi.
I will always pick a semi on that one. Thank you very much. And also a huge thanks to Tom from All the Moquette for being cameraman in that freezing cold weather, because it was bitter, but a lot of fun to go and see it. So if you want to find us on Instagram, it's Chris Nix, it's Siddy Holloway, it's Hidden London Law, and it's me, Alex Grundon. Also, tip one of those bowler hats at the London Transport Museum, at LT Museum. And if you want to find us on YouTube, well, keep watching, like, subscribe and comment below. And if you've got a question for us, get yourself that asked as well down below or in the DMs as well. So find us on the Patreon at 8 o'clock. If not, we'll see you back here next week. Have yourself a great day and stay safe.